At 22, Lisa thought she had earned her moment of triumph. For grueling years of juggling college and part-time jobs, skipping meals to save money, staying up late to finish assignments had finally come to an end. Her body ached from exhaustion, but her heart brimmed with hope as she drove the familiar 3.5-hour route home. The radio played old songs that reminded her of childhood, and her mind wandered to the warm embrace waiting for her. She imagined her mother preparing a special dinner, her father clapping her on the back with pride, and her room a sanctuary unchanged since she left, welcoming her like an old friend. But reality hit hard the moment she stepped inside. The air felt alien, colder than she remembered. No one greeted her at the door. Instead, silence loomed heavy in the house. Her mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her smile forced and awkward. "There's my college girl," she chirped, but the tone lacked warmth. Lisa's chest tightened. Something was off, though she couldn't yet name it. As she glanced around, subtle signs screamed louder than words: unfamiliar shoes by the door, a stranger's jacket draped over the couch. It wasn't just neglect, it felt like erasure. For the first time, Lisa questioned whether this place still belonged to her or if she'd already become a ghost in her own home. The moment Lisa stepped inside her childhood home, something felt eerily wrong. The familiar scent of the house had been replaced by an unfamiliar coldness, as if the walls themselves were rejecting her presence. Nobody greeted her, not even a casual "Hey, Lisa" from her dad or the usual indifferent nod from Zach. Her mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, look who decided to show up," she said, her tone laced with sarcasm disguised as cheerfulness. Lisa tried to ignore the sinking feeling in her chest and asked hesitantly, "Mom, where's my stuff?" She pointed toward her old room, now unrecognizable behind its half-open door. Her mom laughed, but it was sharp, biting. "You don't live here anymore, Lisa. You've got your fancy college life now. Why do you care so much about this little room?" Each word hit like a hammer, echoing louder than any scream could have. Her father walked in then, glancing at her briefly before turning back to his newspaper. No hug, no acknowledgement of her for years of relentless struggle. Even Zach, sprawled lazily on the couch, barely looked up, mumbling something about how college kids think they're better than everyone. It wasn't just neglect, it was dismissal. They acted as though she'd overstayed her welcome simply by walking through the door. When Lisa pressed further, asking why no one had told her about giving away her room, her mom waved her off with a dismissive flick of her hand. "Don't be so dramatic. We thought you wouldn't mind since you're never here anyway." The word stung more than Lisa expected. She realized then that this wasn't just about the room, it was about being erased entirely. To them, she was no longer family, she was a guest, tolerated only when convenient. Lisa froze in the doorway, her breath catching in her throat as she took in the scene before her. The room that had once been hers, the one place where she felt truly safe, was unrecognizable. Gone were the deep blue walls she'd spent an entire summer painting with painstaking care when she was 14. In their place was a sterile beige, dull and lifeless, like the walls of a stranger's home. Her bookshelf, once filled with novels she cherished since middle school, now stood empty except for a few mismatched items belonging to Zach. The poster she'd taped up during late-night study breaks. The glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling she'd stuck there at age 10. Even the small corkboard covered in old photos and concert tickets, all erased without a trace. Her heart sank further as she noticed what was missing. The picture frame holding her favorite childhood drawing. The one she'd proudly presented to her parents after winning second place in a 6th grade art contest. The music box her grandmother had given her just months before passing away. A keepsake Lisa had promised herself she'd treasure forever. It wasn't just the physical objects, it was the memories they carried. The pieces of her woven into every corner of this space. And now, it was all gone, replaced by Zach's oversized duffel bag spilling clothes onto the floor. His sneakers kicked carelessly near the closet, his scent lingering faintly in the air. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. This wasn't just about reclaiming a room. This was erasure. Her family hadn't simply moved her things out, they had scrubbed her existence clean from the house she grew up in. She remembered the countless times her mother compared her to Zach, praising him for being helpless while criticizing her for being too independent. "Why can't you be more like your cousin?" her mom would say, shaking her head disapprovingly whenever Lisa refused to ask for help. Back then, Lisa had stayed silent, swallowing her frustration because arguing only made things worse. But standing here now, staring at the ghost of her former sanctuary, those memories came rushing back with a vengeance. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, trying to steady herself against the overwhelming tide of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal, they swirled together until she couldn't tell which hurt more. Was this how they really saw her? As someone so disposable that her presence could be wiped away without a second thought? Her chest tightened, each heartbeat echoing painfully in her ears. For years, she had fought tirelessly to prove herself, to build a future her family never believed in. But none of it mattered. Not to them. To them, she was invisible. Growing up, Lisa had always been the responsible one. But responsibility in her family came with a price. From the moment she announced her decision to go to college, she became a source of disappointment. Her father's words still echoed in her mind like a scar that refused to heal. "What's the point of studying so hard? You should be working and sending money home instead." It wasn't just his tone, sharp and dismissive, but the way he said it. As if her dreams were nothing more than a selfish indulgence. And then there was Zach. To Lisa, he represented everything she wasn't allowed to be: careless, unambitious, yet endlessly coddled. When Zach wrecked the family car during one of his reckless joyrides, Lisa bore the brunt of the blame. Her mother's voice rang in her ears: "Even now, if you hadn't let him drive without knowing how, this wouldn't have happened." Never mind that Lisa hadn't even been in the car, it didn't matter. In their eyes, she was always at fault because she was supposed to know better. The comparisons between her and Zach were relentless. While Lisa worked part-time jobs to save for tuition, Zach squandered his paychecks on video games and nights out. Yet when Lisa asked why they never expected more from him, her mother would simply shrug. "He's trying his best," she'd say, though everyone knew trying meant failing over and over again. One memory stood out vividly: the summer before her senior year of high school. Lisa had taken a second job to cover her application fees. Exhausted from juggling work and classes, she begged her parents for help, not financially, but emotionally, to understand why her education mattered. Instead, her father scoffed, "You're making all this fuss for a piece of paper?" That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she realized something painful in their eyes. She wasn't worth investing in. Zach might fail repeatedly, but he was family. Lisa, she was expendable. The tension in the room was suffocating, crackling like static electricity as Lisa stood frozen for a moment, her chest rising and falling with each labored breath. Her mother's words hung heavy in the air: "You're being selfish. Zach needed a place, and we did what was best for the family." The phrase "best for the family" hit Lisa like a slap across the face. How many times had she heard that excuse? Each time, it felt more like an erasure than an explanation. Her fingers tightened around the car keys still clutched in her hand, the cold metal biting into her palm. Without another word, she stepped forward, raising her arm, and let the keys fall from her grasp. They clattered onto the hardwood floor with a sharp metallic echo, breaking the fragile silence between them. "I'm not coming back," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Not to this house. Not ever." Her mother blinked, caught off guard by the finality in her tone. "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes now. Lisa didn't respond. Instead, she turned on her heel and moved toward the door, every step deliberate, fueled by years of pent-up frustration. She could feel her mother's gaze burning into her back, hear the muffled protests behind her. But none of it mattered anymore. Nothing mattered except getting out. Outside, the world seemed to mirror her turmoil. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking through her thin jacket almost instantly. The dim porch light swayed slightly in the wind, casting eerie shadows across the driveway. Thunder rumbled in the distance, rolling across the sky like a warning, a fitting backdrop for the chaos swirling within her. As she reached her car, Lisa hesitated for just a second, glancing back at the house one last time. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw movement: her mother standing near the doorway, arms crossed, watching her leave. But there was no warmth in that stare, no regret or plea for her to stay. Just judgment. Slamming the car door shut, Lisa gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white against the leather. Her reflection in the rearview mirror looked pale, almost unrecognizable, as if even she couldn't believe what she'd just done. For a brief moment, panic bubbled up. She hadn't planned this. No wallet, no backup phone. Just the clothes on her back and a small bag of odds and ends tossed hastily into the passenger seat. But then she remembered the look on her mother's face. The casual dismissal of everything she'd worked so hard for, and the doubt vanished. This wasn't running away, it was survival. She turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life as raindrops hammered against the windshield. With trembling hands, she shifted into reverse and pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind the only home she'd ever known. As the headlights illuminated the dark, empty road ahead, Lisa realized something profound. Sometimes, leaving isn't about giving up, it's about finding yourself when everyone else has stopped looking. The porch light flickered faintly as Lisa stood shivering on Ezra's doorstep, her clothes soaked through and clinging to her skin. She hadn't thought this far ahead. When she stormed out of her parents' house, she just knew she couldn't stay there another second. The rain had drenched her completely, but it wasn't the cold that made her tremble. It was the weight of everything crashing down at once. When Ezra finally opened the door, his hair sticking up in every direction, he froze for a split second, disbelief etched across his face. Did I hit my head, or are you actually standing on my porch right now? Before Lisa could respond, Ezra's expression softened. Without hesitation, he pulled her inside, wrapping her in a towel he grabbed from the nearby rack. You're freezing, he muttered, guiding her toward the couch. His voice was calm but laced with concern, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in Lisa's mind. For the first time since leaving her house, she felt safe. Ezra sat down across from her, studying her carefully. He had always been able to read her like an open book, even back in high school when life felt simpler. They'd spent countless afternoons together, then talking about their dreams, sharing secrets, laughing until their sides hurt. But college had pulled them apart, and while they still texted occasionally, it wasn't the same as before. Still, seeing him now reminded Lisa why their friendship had meant so much to her over the years. Are you sure you don't want to call someone else? Ezra asked finally, breaking the silence. Your family, they're going to freak out if they find out you left like this. His tone wasn't judgmental, it was protective, tinged with worry. Lisa shook her head, gripping the edges of the towel tighter around herself. They don't care, she said quietly, her voice trembling. Not really. Ezra frowned, leaning forward slightly. That doesn't mean you should shut them out completely. You've always been stubborn, but sometimes pride gets in the way of fixing things. His words stung, not because they were cruel, but because deep down, Lisa knew he was right. Yet, thinking about calling her mom or dad only reignited the anger simmering inside her. How could she explain to someone who didn't listen in the first place? For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the refrigerator filled the quiet room as Ezra watched her, his brow furrowed. Finally, he sighed. Look, whatever happened, you can stay here for as long as you need. Okay. No judgment. His reassurance was exactly what Lisa needed to hear, not pity, just understanding. The next morning, Lisa was sitting at Ezra's kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone when the pounding on the door began. Each knock reverberated through the small house like a warning shot. Her mother's voice followed, sharp, loud, and unrelenting. Lisa, open this door right now. You're embarrassing the entire family. Lisa froze for a moment, staring at the steaming mug in her hands. She had known this confrontation was inevitable. But hearing her mother's fury so raw and unchecked sent a chill down her spine. Ezra, still half asleep in his hoodie, glanced up from his cereal bowl. Guess that's her, he muttered dryly, raising an eyebrow. She exhaled slowly, steeling herself before getting up to answer the door. Through the peephole, she saw her mother standing on the porch, arms crossed tightly across her chest, lips pressed into a thin line. There was no mistaking the anger radiating off her, her face flushed red, her foot tapping impatiently against the wood. Lisa hesitated briefly before opening the door just wide enough to step into the frame, blocking any view inside. Good morning to you too, Lisa said coolly, though her voice carried an edge of defiance. Her mother didn't bother with pleasantries. What do you think you're doing? She hissed, taking a step closer. You didn't come home last night. Do you have any idea how irresponsible that looks? Lisa folded her arms, mirroring her mother's stance. I figured since you gave away my room, I didn't exactly need to check in like a child anymore. Her mother's jaw tightened visibly, and for a second, Lisa thought she might explode. Instead, she forced herself to speak through gritted teeth. You could have at least stayed to talk about it instead of storming off like some spoiled brat. Lisa let out a short, humorless laugh. Talk about what? How you decided to erase me without even telling me. What exactly was there to discuss, Mom? Her mother's frustration boiled over. You're being selfish. Zach needed a place to stay, and we did what was best for the family. The word family hit Lisa like a punch to the gut. She stared at her mother, disbelief mixing with hurt in her eyes. Best for the family? Really? Because it sure doesn't feel like I'm part of it. Her mother threw her hands up in exasperation. Don't be ridiculous. Of course you're part of the family. No, I'm not, Lisa shot back, her voice rising. Zach is the one you bend over backward for. He's your priority, not me. Name one time you've ever done anything for me like you do for him. For the first time, her mother faltered. Her mouth opened, then closed again, as if searching for an answer that didn't exist. Finally, she snapped, this isn't about favoritism. It's about practicality. You're barely here most of the year anyway. What did you expect us to do, leave the room empty? Lisa clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. I expected you to respect me enough to tell me before tossing my life aside like it meant nothing. Her mother scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. We didn't throw your things away. Oh, thank you so much for that, Lisa retorted sarcastically. Her mother's expression darkened further. Look, I came here to bring you home. Enough with this tantrum. Lisa shook her head, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. I'm not coming back. Not to that house. Not to that family. Her mother's composure cracked. For a brief moment, panic flickered in her eyes. You can't just leave, she said, her voice dropping dangerously low. We're your family. Lisa pulled her arm free from her mother's sudden grasp. Yeah, you should have acted like it. With that, she stepped back inside and shut the door firmly in her mother's face. Leaning against it, she took a shaky breath, feeling both victorious and utterly drained. As Lisa sat on Ezra's couch, staring at the muted glow of the street lamp outside his window, memories she had long buried began surfacing like shards of glass piercing her chest. She remembered the summer before her senior year of high school, when she begged her parents for help with college application fees. You're asking for so much, her father had snapped, shaking his head in disapproval. Meanwhile, Unreliable Zach had been handed a shiny new laptop that same week without even asking. Then there was the time she was forced to take a summer job, instead of attending a prestigious academic camp she had earned a spot in. Her mother's words still stung. We can't afford luxuries like that. You need to contribute. But Zach, he spent those summers traveling with friends. His expenses covered by their parents without question. It wasn't just about money, it was about priorities. Every decision they made seemed designed to remind her where she stood last. The scholarship rejection haunted her most. When she applied for financial aid during her freshman year of college, her parents dismissed it outright. Why waste time on something you probably won't get? Her mom said dismissively. Yet when Zach needed car repairs or rent money, they opened their wallets without hesitation. The message was clear: Zach mattered, Lisa didn't. For years, she convinced herself it didn't bother her, that she was better off not relying on anyone anyway. But now, sitting alone in Ezra's living room, the truth hit her like a freight train. In her family's eyes, she wasn't a daughter worth investing in. She was disposable, someone whose needs could be sacrificed for Zach's comfort. They weren't just indifferent, they were complicit in erasing her existence bit by bit. Her throat tightened as tears welled up, blurring her vision. She thought back to all the times she swallowed her frustration, burying her anger deep inside because arguing only made things worse. Now, though, she realized that silence hadn't protected her, it had cost her. She wasn't part of the family anymore. If anything, she never truly had been. That night, Lisa tossed and turned on Ezra's couch, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like a lead blanket. Was she being selfish? Should she swallow her pride, return home, and pretend everything was fine for the sake of peace? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more suffocating than the last. She imagined walking back into her parents' house, forcing a smile, and accepting Zach's presence in her old room as if it didn't stab at her every time she thought about it. But then she remembered Ezra's words from earlier that evening: sometimes leaving is the only way to protect yourself. His voice had been calm but carried the weight of someone who'd lived through abandonment. He told her how his own family had turned their backs on him after he made a mistake. They couldn't forgive. I spent years trying to fix things, he admitted, but staying only made it worse. They didn't want me there, not really. Lisa stared at the ceiling, her chest tight with conflicting emotions. If she went back, would she be doing the same thing, staying in a place where she wasn't truly wanted? Or was this fight worth having, even if it meant losing herself in the process? Her thoughts drifted to the countless sacrifices she'd made for her family over the years, only to be repaid with erasure. Is family really where you belong, she wondered silently? Or is it just a place you're expected to endure? The idea felt hollow now, almost cruel. For so long, she'd convinced herself that love meant sacrifice, that belonging meant bending until you broke. But what if breaking wasn't the answer? What if leaving wasn't failure, it was freedom? That night, Lisa sat cross-legged on Ezra's couch with a worn-out notebook in her lap. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional rustle of leaves outside. Her pen hovered over the page before she finally wrote, "Family is supposed to be where you belong. But if that place no longer has room for you, should you stay and fight or find a new home?" She stared at the words for a long time, as if hoping they would rearrange themselves into an answer. Her mind drifted back to everything that had happened: the empty room, her mother's dismissive tone, Zach's presence replacing hers. It wasn't just about the room anymore, it was about being erased. She thought about her parents' stubbornness, their refusal to see how much this hurt her. And yet, deep down, part of her still wondered if she was making too big a deal out of nothing. The next morning, Lisa scrolled through her phone absent-mindedly. Notifications from missed calls and texts flooded the screen, all from her mom. Each message carried the same plea: come home. But what did home even mean now? Was it the house she grew up in, or the people who lived there? Neither felt like hers anymore. As she set the phone down, she glanced at Ezra, who was sipping coffee at the kitchen table. Do you think I'm wrong for leaving? She asked suddenly. He looked up, surprised by the question. After a pause, he shrugged. I think you're doing what you need to survive. Sometimes staying doesn't fix things, it just breaks you more. His words stayed with her long after their conversation ended. Sitting alone later that evening, Lisa opened her notebook again. Below her earlier entry, she added one final line. Maybe starting over isn't running away. Maybe it's finding myself when everyone else stopped looking. But the uncertainty lingered. What came next? Should she try to mend things with her family or carve out a life on her own terms? If you were Lisa, would you choose to fight for your place or start over somewhere new?